From the moment you are born, you are enrolled in a game, and the first rule of this game is that it is inherently, inescapably risky. Every breath you take is an act of faith. Every step you make is a dance with uncertainty. We spend so much of our lives, so much of our precious energy trying to deny this fundamental truth. We try to build walls around ourselves, constructing a fortress of familiarity, a safe harbor where the storms of life and the winds of chance cannot possibly reach us. But today, I am here to tell you that you are chasing a phantom. The very concept of a risk-free life is the greatest illusion ever sold to humanity. If you think that trying, that stepping out, that building something is risky, I ask you to wait. Wait until they hand you the bill for not trying. Wait until you feel the crushing weight of that cost. If you think investing your money is risky, wait until you are forced to confront the quiet, certain poverty that comes from not investing. Everything that gives life its meaning, its flavor, its texture, and its rewards is on the other side of a calculated risk. Getting married is a risk. Having children is a risk. Starting a business, changing careers, moving to a new city, investing in yourself, it is all magnificently, beautifully risky. Let me tell you just how risky this game of life truly is. After decades of study, after observing the lives of the successful and the unsuccessful, I have found only one certainty, one absolute guarantee that applies to every single person listening to my voice right now. You are not getting out of this alive. That is the ultimate risk, the one you cannot negotiate with, the one you cannot avoid. It is the one great deadline we all share. So the question is not whether you will take risks. Life has already made that decision for you. The question is, what kind of risk will define your story? Will you take the risks that lead to a life of growth, contribution, and fulfillment? Or will you take the one single overarching risk that guarantees failure, the risk of doing nothing at all? I once asked my mentor, a man of profound wisdom and considerable wealth, what is the secret to a life of success? He looked me straight in the eye, and his answer was not a complex formula. It was a simple, shattering truth. He said, you have got to be willing to take a chance, because it's all risky. And then he delivered the line that became a cornerstone of my entire philosophy. He said, the minute you begin to back away from risk, you have signed up for a life of mediocrity. Let that phrase echo in your mind. You have signed up for it. It is an active contract you make with your future. I felt the weight of those words, because at 25 years old, I was broke, deeply frustrated, and my entire life strategy was built upon the crumbling foundation of playing it safe. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was being prudent, but I was not. I was being a coward. And I didn't realize that playing it safe is the most dangerous, most perilous game of all. It does not guarantee safety. It guarantees stagnation. It guarantees that the muscle of your ambition will atrophy. It guarantees that you will never discover the depths of your own potential. And it guarantees that you will stand on the sidelines and watch as the parade of life's great rewards passes by, reserved only for those who had the courage to step onto the field. Think of your life as a great and magnificent ship. Its hull is built from your talents. Its masts are crafted from your ambitions. Its sails are woven from your dreams. A ship, it is true, is safest when it is tied up in the harbor. It is protected from the wind, the waves, the storms. It is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. A ship is built to sail the vast, unknown ocean. It is designed to face the storms in order to discover new worlds. Your potential is that new world. The harbor is your comfort zone, and the storms are the risks you must be willing to face to reach your destination. The tragedy is that many of us become so accustomed to the harbor that we forget we were built for the sea. The millionaire, the leader, the innovator, they do not fear the storms. They respect them, they study them, they learn to navigate them. And they use the very winds that others fear to propel them toward their destiny. So I ask you, as we begin our work today, is your ship tied up in the harbor, slowly and safely rusting away? Or are you ready to learn how to untie the ropes, raise the sails, and navigate the seas of intelligent risk? Our task today is to shatter the great illusion of safety and replace it with a philosophy that will actually serve you a philosophy of intelligent courage. To do this, we must first understand why we crave the harbor so intensely. This desire for safety is not a modern invention. It is not a character flaw. It is a biological inheritance. Your brain, at its most primitive level, the part they call the lizard brain, is not designed to make you happy. It is not designed to make you fulfilled or wealthy. It is designed to do one thing and one thing only, to keep you alive. It is a survival machine. For millennia, the world was a dangerous place. A rustle in the bushes could be a predator. An unfamiliar food could be poison. A strange tribe could be an enemy. In that environment, the person who was most cautious, most skeptical, most risk-averse was the one who survived to pass on their genes. Your desire to play it safe is the echo of your ancestors whispering, "Don't get eaten." But here is the problem. You are now living in a world of unprecedented opportunity, but you are still running on ancient fear-based software. The predator is no longer a saber-toothed tiger. It is the fear of making a sales call. The poison is no longer a toxic berry. It is the fear of investing in a new idea. Your brain's survival mechanism cannot tell the difference. It screams danger with the same intensity for a business risk as it would for a physical threat. To live a life of growth, you must learn to consciously override this primitive programming. You must become the master of your own mind, capable of distinguishing between a genuine threat to your survival and a manufactured fear that is simply guarding the entrance to your next level of growth. This is the first and most noble struggle of the aspiring individual. This brings us to a critical distinction we must make. We must recalibrate our very definition of risk. Society has taught us to fear one kind of risk while completely ignoring another, far more dangerous kind. The first type is the risk of commission. This is the risk of doing something. It is the risk of taking an action and failing. You start the business and it goes bankrupt. You make the investment and it loses money. You ask for the promotion and you get rejected. This type of risk is visible. It is immediate. It can be painful and embarrassing. This is the risk that our lizard brain is terrified of. But there is a second type of risk. It is the risk of omission. This is the risk of not doing something. It is the risk of letting an opportunity pass by. The risk of not starting the business, of not making the investment, of not asking the question. This risk is invisible. It is silent. It does not create an immediate event of failure. Instead, it accumulates over time, drop by drop, into a vast, deep ocean of regret. The world teaches you to fear the risk of commission. But I am here to tell you that the risk of omission is infinitely more dangerous to your soul. The pain of a failed business venture will fade. The lessons learned will make you stronger. But the pain of looking back on your life at age 70 and asking, what if? What if I had just had the courage to try? That is a pain that will haunt you. The bill for not trying is always higher than the cost of failing. Let's return to our ship in the harbor. We think of it as safe. But what is really happening to that ship as it sits day after day, year after year, tied to the dock? It is not remaining in a pristine state of preservation. No, the salty water is slowly corroding its hull. Barnacles, the symbols of complacency, begin to grow, creating drag and slowing it down. The strong wooden planks begin to rot from the inside out as skills go unused. The sails, never unfurled to catch the wind, become brittle and weak as ambition fades. The perceived safety of the harbor is actually a state of slow, invisible, and inevitable decay. True preservation for a ship and for a person does not come from stillness. It comes from being in motion, from constantly testing its limits, from repairing the damage from the storms and becoming stronger for it. A life lived in the harbor is not a life preserved. It is a life surrendered. And what have you surrendered it for? You have surrendered it for mediocrity. When my mentor said that backing away from risk is signing up for mediocrity, he was describing a contract. You are making a deal. You are trading the magnificent, uncertain, and potentially glorious adventure of your full potential in exchange for the predictable, dull, and ultimately soul-crushing routine of a safe life. It is a life governed by the opinions of others. A life of quiet desperation where the background noise is the constant nagging question of what could have been. Mediocrity is not a catastrophic failure. It is 1,000 small surrenders. It is the daily decision to choose comfort over your calling. So, if the illusion of safety is a trap, what is the alternative? It is not reckless abandon. It is not gambling. The alternative is the philosophy I call intelligent courage. Intelligent courage is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of it. It is the ability to feel the fear, to acknowledge the ancient programming, and to act anyway, based on a higher set of principles. This philosophy is built on 3 pillars. The first is clarity of purpose. You must know why you need to sail the seas. What is the new world you are seeking? A vague desire for more is not enough to overcome the storms of fear. You need a deep, compelling, emotional reason. A strong why can endure almost any how. The second pillar is the acceptance of uncertainty. The courageous person does not demand guarantees. They understand that storms are a natural and necessary part of the journey. They do not pray for a life without challenges. They pray for the strength and wisdom to meet the challenges that arise. They see uncertainty not as a threat, but as the space where possibility is born. The third pillar is a commitment to growth. The goal is not merely to reach the destination. The goal is to become a master sailor in the process. Every storm you navigate, every challenge you overcome, makes you more capable, more resilient, more wise. The risks are not obstacles to your goal. They are the curriculum for your personal development. And so we find ourselves back at the beginning, at this present moment. The great illusion of safety beckons, whispering promises of a life without pain. But you now know the truth. You know that the walls of that safe harbor are actually the walls of a prison you have built for yourself. The purpose of our discussion today has been to hand you the key to that prison. The key is the understanding that the greatest risk is to risk nothing at all. The key is the decision to stop signing the contract of mediocrity and to start writing a new story, a story of intelligent courage. I challenge you to untie the ropes, to raise the sails, to feel the fear, and to set a course for the open sea, because your potential is out there waiting in a new world, but it will not wait forever. The work begins now. In our last discussion, we shattered the great illusion of safety. We came to the stark and liberating conclusion that the harbor, while perceived as safe, is actually a place of slow decay, and that a life of meaning is found only on the open seas of uncertainty. But knowing that the harbor is a prison is not the same as having the courage to leave it. Knowing the truth is not the same as acting on it. Between the decision to set sail and the act of untying the ropes lies a vast, treacherous territory. Today, we venture into that territory. Today, we confront the prison guard. It is an enemy as ancient as humanity itself, an antagonist responsible for more unrealized potential than all other obstacles combined. Today, we are going to talk about fear. We must understand that fear, in its original design, is a gift. It is a biological marvel, a survival mechanism honed over millions of years to protect us from genuine physical harm. It is the alarm that rings when a predator is near. But in the modern world, this ancient alarm system has been hijacked. It now rings loudest not when our lives are in danger, but when our comfort zones are. The primary function of fear for most people today is not to protect them, but to paralyze them. And we must learn to tell the difference. To master fear, we must first dissect it. We must shine a bright light into the dark corners of our mind and see this enemy for what it truly is. Fear is not a monolith. It is a collection of shadows, and we will now call them out by name. The first and most obvious shadow is the fear of financial loss. This is the fear that keeps us chained to paychecks we despise. The thought of losing the money we have worked so hard for is a visceral, painful one. This fear is so powerful because it taps directly into our primitive need for security and survival. Our brain equates financial loss with a loss of resources, which in ancient times meant a threat to our very existence. The mediocre mind looks at its small pile of seeds, its savings, and its primary motivation is to not lose a single one. So it clutches them tightly, it buries them. It refuses to plant them in the fertile soil of opportunity because the soil is uncertain. And so year after year, the pile of seeds remains the same, or worse, it slowly dwindles, eaten away by the pests of inflation. The fear of losing a little guarantees the certainty of never gaining a lot. The second and often more powerful shadow is the fear of social judgment. Let us call this by its true name, the fear of the tribe. For our ancestors, being accepted by the tribe was a matter of life and death. To be ostracized, to be cast out, meant certain doom. Your brain is therefore hardwired with a profound primal terror of looking foolish, of being criticized, of being rejected by your peers. This is the fear that asks, what will they think of me? What will my family say if my business fails? What will my friends say if I try something new and fall on my face? We become actors on a stage, performing a version of ourselves we think the audience wants to see rather than living an authentic life. We silence our own ambitions to quiet the potential whispers of others. You must understand this. The tribe you fear today, the critical neighbor, the skeptical relative, the jeering coworker, holds no power over your survival. Their opinions are ghosts, yet we allow these ghosts to haunt the hallways of our minds and keep us locked in rooms of mediocrity. The person destined for success must eventually make the courageous decision to value the applause of their future self over the potential criticism of the current crowd. The third shadow is perhaps the most subtle and most pervasive. It is the fear of the unknown. We call this the fear of the mapless journey. The human mind craves certainty. It wants a predictable path, a clear set of instructions, a guarantee of the outcome. The unknown is a blank space on the map, and our fear-based mind is a masterful artist of anxiety, filling that blank space with terrifying monsters and dreadful scenarios. The job you dislike is known. The financial struggle you endure is familiar. There is a strange, perverse comfort in a predictable misery. But the new venture, the new investment, the new life, that is the uncharted sea. And so we stay in the harbor, not because we love the harbor, but because we fear the sea. You must learn to see the unknown not as a void to be feared, but as a blank canvas upon which you can create a masterpiece. Now, fear is not just a feeling, it is a voice. And if you wish to overcome it, you must learn to recognize its tone. It is a master of disguise. Fear rarely announces itself as fear. Instead, it speaks to you in the language of prudence, logic, and reason. It whispers, "Be realistic." This is one of its favorite lines. Be realistic is the slogan of the mediocre mind, an excuse to aim low and avoid disappointment. It says, don't get your hopes up. It says, that's not for people like you. Fear also disguises itself as preparation. It champions the cause of procrastination. It tells you, I'm not ready yet. I just need to do a little more research. I'll start when I have a better plan. I'll begin when the time is right. But the research is endless, and the perfect time is a mirage. This is not preparation. It is a sophisticated hiding strategy. And when all else fails, fear manufactures excuses that sound like legitimate reasons. I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the connections. Let me tell you a profound truth. These are not reasons, they are results. They are the results of a life lived by listening to the voice of fear. The lack of time, money, and connections is the consequence of past inaction, not a justification for future inaction. I know this voice intimately. I lived with it for years. At 25 years old, I was broke, working a job that was a dead end, and I was a prisoner of these very fears. Every time I considered taking a chance, that voice would begin its litany of lies. You're not smart enough, you don't have the experience, you'll fail, and everyone will see. And because I listened, I stayed exactly where I was, struggling, frustrated, and stuck. It was my mentor who finally gave me the weapon to fight back. He looked at my life, he listened to my excuses, and he said something that shattered my entire worldview. He said, fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. Think about that. It's not the fall that stops us, it's the fear of the fall. It's not the failure that destroys lives, it's the fear of failure that prevents lives from ever beginning. He told me, you're afraid of losing money? I guarantee you'll never have any. You're afraid of looking foolish? I guarantee you'll never become wise. You're afraid of taking a risk? Then you have already lost, because the game will be played and won by others. That was the moment I realized that fear was not my protector, it was my thief. It was a robber stealing from me in the dead of night. What does fear steal? It steals far more than just money. First and foremost, it steals your growth. You cannot grow your muscles without stressing them. You cannot grow your mind without challenging it. You cannot grow your life without pushing beyond your current limits. Fear's primary function is to keep you safely within your existing boundaries, and in doing so, it guarantees you will never expand. Second, it steals your authenticity. When you are afraid of social judgment, you wear a mask. You say things you don't mean to please people you don't respect. You live a life based on the expectations of others, not on the convictions of your own heart. Fear makes you a stranger to yourself. Third, it steals your time. Think of the years, the decades, lost to hesitation. The time spent thinking about it, waiting for the right moment. Time is the one resource that is utterly non-renewable. Fear is a thief of years, and it never gives them back. And finally, it steals your legacy. The books that were never written, the businesses that were never started, the contributions that were never made, the potential that was never realized. Fear robs the world of the unique gift that only you could have given. So what is the antidote? Is the goal to become fearless? No, that is impossible. Only a fool is fearless. The goal is not to eliminate fear. The goal is to change your relationship with it. It is to learn to act in spite of it. The first step is to see fear as a compass. For your entire life, you have seen fear as a wall, a stop sign. From this day forward, I want you to see it as a compass. In the realm of personal growth, fear almost always points directly north. It points toward the very thing you need to do. The conversation you are most afraid of having is the most important conversation you need to have. The project you are most afraid to start is the project that holds your greatest potential. Your fear is a roadmap to your next level of evolution. The goal is not to run from the direction the compass is pointing, but to learn to walk toward it. The second step is to shrink the time frame for decision. You must close the gap between instinct and action. When you have an idea and instinct to act, your fear brain gives you a window of about 5 seconds before it floods your mind with doubt and kills the impulse. You must learn to outsmart your own brain. When you have the instinct to speak up in a meeting, to make the call, to start the task, you must physically move within 5 seconds. This is not about recklessness. It is a neurological trick to bypass your internal paralyzer. And third, you must rehearse the worst-case scenario. Fear thrives in the vague and the unknown. You must drag it into the light. Take out a piece of paper. On it, write down the risk you are afraid to take. Then, ask yourself, what is the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen if I do this and fail? Write it all down in excruciating detail. Then, for each point, ask yourself, what could I do to mitigate this? And what would I do to recover if it happened? What you will discover almost every time is that the monster in your mind is far more terrifying than the reality on paper. You will realize that you have the strength and resourcefulness to handle the worst-case scenario. And in doing so, you rob the fear of its power over you. We are left then with a choice. It is a choice you must make, not once, but every single day, every single hour. In front of you stands your fear, with all of its logical sounding excuses and its terrifying stories. And beside it stands your dream, with its promise of growth and fulfillment. Both are asking for your attention, both are asking to be fed. The mediocre mind feeds the fear. The millionaire mind feels the fear, acknowledges it for the compass that it is, and takes the next step anyway. You are not ruled by fear. You are not driven by fear. You are the one who decides. The choice is yours. We have just confronted the inner prison guard. We have stared into the face of fear and called it by its name. If this journey of mastering your own psychology resonates with you, then I invite you to continue down this path with us. This channel is dedicated to the philosophy of personal achievement and the art of living a life of consequence. The next part of our discussion is the most critical. It is the antidote to fear. It is the millionaire's mindset. To ensure you do not miss this pivotal lesson, take a moment now to subscribe. Join a community of individuals who are committed to choosing possibility over paralysis. Click that button and let's continue. In our last discussion, we stared directly into the face of fear. We dissected its anatomy, we learned its language, and we saw it for what it is, not a protector, but a thief that robs us of our growth, our authenticity, our time, and our legacy. Knowing the nature of the enemy is the first step. But now we arrive at the pivotal moment, the great fork in the road of life. On one side is the well-trodden path, marked by the footprints of the cautious and the timid. On the other is the path less traveled, the one that leads over the mountains of uncertainty. The choice of which path to take is the most important decision you will ever make. Today, we will draw the map for that second path. We are here to discuss the great philosophical divide between those who struggle and those who succeed. It is the single most important distinction you can ever learn about the creation of wealth, and it is this: the poor avoid risk, the rich manage it. Let that statement settle into your mind. It is not about intelligence or luck or background. It is about a fundamental difference in strategy. It is about how one chooses to play the game of life. One philosophy leads to a life of contraction and scarcity. The other leads to a life of expansion and abundance. Let us first walk down the path of the avoider. Let us understand the anatomy of this defensive life. The primary goal of the risk avoider is not to win, it is not to lose. Their entire worldview is built upon the preservation of what they currently have, no matter how meager it may be. They operate from a mindset I call the scarcity of one. They believe they have one life, one reputation, one chance, one sum of money, and that any loss is permanent, catastrophic, and a final verdict on their worth. Because of this, they are masters of negative visualization. When presented with an opportunity that has a 90% chance of success and a 10% chance of failure, their mind does not see the 90. Their entire mental and emotional focus is immediately consumed by that 10%. They can articulate in vivid detail 100 ways the venture could go wrong. But they struggle to articulate with any conviction how it could go right. Their imagination, a tool meant for creation, has become a factory for fear. The currency they trade in is the illusion of security. They trade their magnificent potential for a predictable paycheck. They trade their freedom for the familiarity of a job they may not even like. They believe they are making a wise and prudent trade, but they are buying a fraudulent product. True security does not come from avoiding all risk. That is the most insecure position of all, for it makes you completely dependent on a single source, a single employer, a single skill set, leaving you utterly vulnerable to the winds of change you cannot control. Now, let us turn and walk down the other path, the path of the manager. This is the architecture of a life played on offense. The primary goal of the risk manager is not just to avoid losing, it is to win the game. They operate not from a scarcity of one, but from an abundance of many. They believe in many opportunities, many chances, and many lessons. A single loss is not the end of the story, it is merely a chapter. It is data, it is feedback, it is the tuition paid for a valuable education. When the risk manager looks at that same opportunity with its 90% chance of success, their mind immediately gravitates toward that 90. They ask, what is the potential reward here? How could this change my life? What could this create? Their imagination is a tool for visualizing possibility. But, and this is the crucial difference, they do not ignore the 10% chance of failure. They simply engage with it differently. They do not see it as a stop sign. They see it as a variable to be engineered. They ask the strategic questions. How can I prepare for that 10%? How can I create a safety net? How can I structure this deal so that if the downside happens, the loss is contained and not catastrophic? How can I play the game in such a way that I can afford to be wrong and still stay in the game? The currency they seek is not security, but true freedom. They understand that real security comes not from a predictable salary, but from developing the skills, the character, and the resourcefulness to create value in any economic climate. They are willing to trade short-term comfort for long-term, unshakable freedom. This brings us to the practical toolkit of the risk manager. How do they do it? It is not magic. It is a process. It is a set of disciplines built on 3 pillars: knowledge, strategy, and action. Let us first speak of knowledge. My mentor taught me that risk isn't the enemy, ignorance is. Most people who lose in the game of risk are not taking risks at all. They are simply gambling. They are operating in a vacuum of knowledge. You must come to see knowledge not as an academic pursuit, but as the most powerful form of risk insurance you can possibly acquire. The more you learn about an industry, the lower your risk of starting a business in it. The more you understand about investing, the lower your risk of losing your capital. The more you know, the more clearly you can distinguish between a foolish gamble and an intelligent opportunity. You do not reduce risk by avoiding the game. You reduce risk by becoming a master of the game. You must commit to becoming a lifelong student of the fields in which you wish to succeed. The second tool is strategy. A goal without a strategy is merely a wish. A dream without a plan is a fantasy. The risk manager is a master strategist. What does this mean? It means they define the win. They know exactly what success looks like before they begin. It means they map the field. They understand the rules of the game and the players involved. And most importantly, their strategy almost always involves starting small. This is the pilot principle. You test your ideas on a small scale before you commit massive resources. This is what I did when I began my journey. I did not quit my job to start a business. That would have been a reckless gamble. I managed the risk by starting part-time. I used my evenings and weekends to learn the ropes, to make my mistakes when the stakes were low, to test the market and to build my skills. I let the business prove itself before I bet my entire livelihood on it. This is not cowardice. It is intelligence. It is the way you gather real-world data and let your results, not your hopes, guide your larger decisions. The third tool is action. Knowledge is potential power. Strategy is potential power. Action is power itself. Action is the engine that drives everything. It is the force that turns the intangible blueprint of your strategy into the tangible reality of your results. You can have the greatest knowledge and the most brilliant strategy, but if they remain locked in your mind, they are worthless. Action is what conquers fear. The fear of the unknown is only powerful when it remains unknown. The moment you take the first step, the unknown begins to become known. The monster you imagined is never as fearsome as the reality you encounter. Action is the light that dispels the shadows of doubt. But the master of risk management understands one more thing, a deeper game that is being played. It is the game within the game, emotional management. Managing risk is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is a profound emotional discipline. The greatest risk managers have learned the art of detaching their personal self-worth from the outcome of a single venture. They are fully committed to the process, but they are emotionally detached from any one result. The amateur rides a violent roller coaster of emotion. When a venture succeeds, they are euphoric, a genius. When it fails, they are devastated, a failure. This emotional volatility leads to poor decision-making. The master, however, cultivates an inner calm. They understand that wins and losses are both part of the game. They celebrate their wins without losing their humility, and they analyze their losses without losing their self-esteem. They know that as long as they stick to a sound process of taking intelligent, asymmetric risks, the long-term trajectory will be upward, regardless of short-term fluctuations. This emotional detachment is their superpower. It allows them to remain in the game when others are scared away, and it allows them to think clearly when others are panicking. And so we are left with this great divide, this fork in the road. It is not a division of class or of background. It is a division of philosophy. The philosophy of avoidance is a philosophy of contraction. It makes your world smaller. It shrinks your potential. It narrows your horizons. It is a life spent defending a small territory that gets smaller every year. The philosophy of management is the philosophy of expansion. It makes your world larger. It expands your skills, your experiences, your wealth, and your contribution. It is a life spent on a thrilling expedition into the vast territory of your own potential. You choose your philosophy with every decision you make that involves uncertainty. Look at the next such decision in your life. Will you ask the question of the avoider, what if I lose, what if it goes wrong? Or will you begin to ask the questions of the manager, what is the potential upside here? How can I learn more to reduce the risk? How can I test this on a small scale? And how can I structure this so that I can play the game to win? Your answers to those questions, repeated over time, will determine your destiny. The choice is yours. In our last discussion, we stood at the great fork in the road. We chose the path less traveled, the path of the risk manager, not the risk avoider. We adopted the philosophy of the millionaire, a mindset that does not run from uncertainty but rather learns to navigate it with skill and strategy. But a mindset without a methodology is powerless. A philosophy without a process is merely a collection of nice-sounding ideas. Today we move from the why to the how. We transition from the architecture of the mind to the mechanics of action. Today we learn the craft. Many people hear the word risk and picture a reckless gambler at a casino betting everything on a single turn of a card. But a life of success is not built on gambles. It is built on strategic decisions. Today we will dismantle the notion of gambling and replace it with the sophisticated skill of the strategist. We are here to learn the art of the calculated leap. This art is not a mysterious talent you are born with. It is a framework, a disciplined process that anyone can learn and apply. It consists of 4 foundational principles that, when practiced together, will transform you from a hopeful amateur into a calculated and effective professional in the game of life. Let us begin with the foundation upon which all smart risks are built. Principle number 1, the education principle. My mentor once told me a line that I have never forgotten. He said, "Risk isn't the enemy, ignorance is." The vast majority of financial and personal failures are not failures of risk, they are failures of knowledge. People don't lose because the game is rigged, they lose because they came to the game unprepared. You must come to see knowledge not as a passive academic pursuit, but as the most powerful form of risk insurance you can possibly acquire. Every hour you spend studying, every book you read, every mentor you listen to is an insurance premium you pay to protect yourself from the catastrophic cost of ignorance. I call this cost the ignorance tax. It is the price you pay for taking action without understanding. The goal of the education principle is to minimize this tax as much as possible. But we must distinguish between different levels of knowledge. First, there is book knowledge. This is the theory, the foundation. It comes from reading, listening to lectures, and studying the fundamentals of your chosen field. It is essential, but it is not enough. It is the map, but it is not the territory. The second higher level is mentorship knowledge. This is the wisdom gained from someone who has already successfully navigated the territory. A mentor allows you to learn from their mistakes, not just your own. They can see the pitfalls you cannot. They can save you years of wasted effort and thousands of dollars in losses. Seeking out and learning from mentors is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate strategic shortcut. The third and most valuable level is street knowledge. This is the knowledge gained from your own small calculated actions. It is the feedback you get from the real world. It is the wisdom forged in the fire of application. You can read 100 books on swimming, but you will only truly learn how to swim when you get in the water. The art of the calculated leap requires all 3 forms of knowledge working in harmony. You use book knowledge to form your plan, mentorship knowledge to refine it, and street knowledge to execute it. This brings us to the second principle, which acts as the primary filter for all opportunities. Principle number 2, the asymmetric principle. The average person, when considering a risk, thinks in symmetric terms. They risk $1 for the chance to make another dollar. They risk their time for a predictable linear return. This is the path to a slow, incremental life. The master of the calculated leap thinks differently. They exclusively hunt for asymmetric opportunities. An asymmetric risk is one where the potential upside is exponentially and dramatically greater than the potential downside. They are looking for situations where they can risk $1 for a realistic chance to make $10 or $50 or $100. This is the 10x mindset. You must train your mind to stop looking for small, safe, incremental gains and start searching for opportunities that have the potential for explosive growth. Where do you find these opportunities? They are often found at the intersection of leverage, scalability, and unique knowledge. They are found in ventures where you can leverage technology to serve thousands instead of dozens. They are found in ideas that can be scaled without a proportional increase in cost. They are found when you apply a unique skill you possess to an industry that desperately needs it. You might think that seeking such high rewards is the definition of high risk, but the opposite is often true. The hidden risk of safe bets, the ones with low risk and low reward, is that they cost you your most valuable and non-renewable asset, your time. You can spend 5 years of your life dedicated to a safe path and end up with only a marginal gain. In that same 5 years, the strategic risk taker could have tested 10 asymmetric ideas. 9 might have failed with small contained losses. But the one that succeeded could have created a fortune that changes their life forever. You must ask yourself not only how much can I lose, but also how much am I losing by thinking too small. Once you have identified a potential asymmetric opportunity, you do not simply leap. This is where the third principle comes into play, the one that separates the professional from the reckless. Principle number 3, the pilot principle. No scientist would test a groundbreaking new theory by betting their entire career and laboratory on the first experiment. They conduct a small, controlled pilot study. You must treat your business and investment ideas with the same scientific rigor. The pilot principle is the laboratory of reality. It works like this. First, you have a hypothesis. This is your idea. I believe this product will solve a problem for this market. I believe this investment is undervalued. Second, you design a small, fast, and cheap experiment to test that hypothesis. You do not build the entire factory. You create a single prototype. You do not launch a national advertising campaign. You buy $100 worth of social media ads targeted at a specific audience. You do not quit your job. You dedicate your evenings to the venture for 90 days. The goal of the experiment is to get real-world data as quickly and inexpensively as possible. Third, you collect and analyze the data. The data is the market's response. Did people click? Did they buy? Did they give you feedback? You must be a ruthless, unemotional analyst of this data. The market is never wrong. Your theory might be, but the market's response is the truth. Finally, based on this data, you iterate. You either pivot, adjusting your approach based on the feedback, you persevere, scaling up what's working, or you pull the plug, celebrating the cheap lesson you just learned before you invested your life savings. This is what I did. Starting my business part-time was my pilot program. It was my laboratory. I tested my skills, my product, and my market with minimal financial risk. The business had to prove its viability in the real world before I was willing to commit to it fully. This is not a lack of confidence. This is the ultimate expression of strategic intelligence. This leads us to the final and perhaps most emotionally difficult principle. It is the armor that protects the strategist from their own worst enemies: greed and hope. Principle number 4, the principle of the predetermined exit. Before you take any calculated leap, before you invest a single dollar or a single hour, you must define the 2 gates of your venture. The first is the gate of success. The second is the gate of failure. The gate of success is your profit target. You must decide with a clear and logical mind at what point the venture has been successful enough. At what point will you take some or all of your profits off the table? This protects you from the emotion of greed. Greed is what turns a great win into a catastrophic loss, because you hold on too long hoping for just a little more. But the more important gate is the gate of failure. This is your stop loss. This is the predetermined point at which you will accept that your hypothesis was wrong, cut your losses, and exit the venture. This is the most crucial rule in all of risk management. You must make this decision before you are emotionally invested, before you are in the thick of the struggle. Why? Because once you are in the game, your judgment will be clouded by hope and ego. Hope is the gambler's drug. It whispers, just hold on a little longer, it will turn around. Your ego hates to admit it was wrong. And so without a predetermined exit, people ride a bad investment all the way to zero, pouring good money after bad, driven by emotions, not strategy. Your stop loss is a logical contract you make with your future emotional self. It is your armor, and you must honor it ruthlessly. Seeing a stop loss not as a personal failure, but as a strategic retreat, is a sign of immense maturity. It frees up your capital, your time, and your precious mental energy to be redeployed to the next better opportunity. It is not quitting. It is the act of a general who knows that sometimes you must sacrifice a pawn to win the war. So there you have it, the art of the calculated leap. It is a 4-part process. You begin with education to shrink the darkness of ignorance. You filter your world through the lens of the asymmetric principle, hunting for 10x opportunities. You test those opportunities with disciplined, small-scale pilots, and you protect yourself always with a predetermined exit strategy. This is the framework that turns risk from a game of chance into a game of skill. Success in this realm is not a matter of luck. It is not a matter of genius. It is the consistent and disciplined application of this process. Risk is the price of admission to a life of consequence, a life of growth, a life of wealth. But you do not have to pay that price blindly. You now have the tools, you now have the framework. The difference between the amateur and the professional is not the absence of risk, but the mastery of it. Go and become a master. We have traveled a great distance together on this intellectual journey. We began by shattering the great illusion of safety, revealing the harbor not as a sanctuary, but as a place of slow decay. We then confronted the inner prison guard, fear, dissecting its anatomy and learning its language of lies. We chose the path of the millionaire's mindset, embracing the philosophy of managing risk rather than avoiding it. And most recently, we have equipped ourselves with the strategist toolkit, learning the art of the calculated leap. We have the philosophy, we have the mindset, we have the framework, but a map is not the journey. A set of tools is useless without the will to build. We now arrive at the final frontier, the one that separates the student from the master, the thinker from the doer. This is the frontier that is crossed not with intellect but with spirit. Today we are here to talk about the activating force behind all achievement. We are here to talk about courage. In the world of science, there is a concept known as activation energy. It is the minimum amount of energy required to initiate a chemical reaction. Without that initial spark, all the ingredients, all the potential can sit inert forever. Courage is the activation energy for human potential. You can have a brilliant mind, a world-class strategy, and a heart full of noble ambitions. But without that initial deliberate spark of courage, your potential remains a dormant chemical equation. It is a promise, but not a reality. The first calculated leap you take is not just an action, it is a declaration. It is the moment you provide the spark. It is you telling yourself and telling the universe that you are no longer content to simply be a list of ingredients. You have decided to become a reaction. You have decided to become a force. This first act of courage is the most difficult and the most powerful. Why? Because it shatters a lifetime of conditioning. Every time you have retreated, every time you have hesitated, you have laid a neural pathway in your brain that says, retreat is safety. Your first calculated risk is the act of carving a new path. It is an act of defiance against your own history of fear. And once that new path is carved, it becomes exponentially easier to walk it again. This brings us to a profound truth about this virtue. Courage is not a trait you are born with. Courage is a muscle you build, and the world is your gymnasium. Think about how a muscle grows. It does not grow through comfort or rest. It grows only when it is placed under stress. When it is asked to lift a weight it has not lifted before. This process is called progressive overload. You do not walk into the gymnasium for the first time and attempt to lift the heaviest weight. That would be foolish, and it would lead to injury. You begin with a weight you can handle, but one that still challenges you. This is your first small calculated risk. It might be making a single sales call you've been dreading. It might be investing a small sum of money you can afford to lose. It might be signing up for a class to learn a new skill. The weight is not overwhelming, but it is uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, growth begins. The second law of the gymnasium is that consistency is everything. You do not build strength by going to the gym once a year. The muscle is forged in the discipline of showing up day after day, week after week, especially on the days you do not feel like it. The same is true for courage. It is not built in one grand heroic act. It is built in 1,000 small, consistent acts of bravery. It is the daily choice to make the difficult call, to have the honest conversation, to work on your venture when you would rather be distracted. Each act is another repetition, making the muscle stronger. And the third law of the gymnasium is that growth involves pain. When a muscle is worked, its fibers are torn. The soreness you feel is the sign that the muscle is in the process of rebuilding itself stronger than before. The exercise of courage is often uncomfortable. It is filled with anxiety, with uncertainty, with the temporary pain of rejection or failure. This discomfort is not a sign that you should stop. It is the signal that you are in the process of tearing the fibers of your limitations. It is the feeling of growth itself. So what is the ultimate reward for all this difficult work? What is the true harvest of a courageous life? We speak of fortunes, and yes, financial wealth is often a consequence. But the true rewards are far deeper and far more valuable than money alone. The first, and perhaps greatest reward, is unshakable self-respect. There is a quiet, profound dignity that comes from knowing you are the kind of person who faces their fears. It is a form of inner wealth that no market crash, no business failure, no critic can ever take from you. It is the reward of keeping the most important promise, the promise you make to yourself to live up to your own potential. This self-respect becomes the foundation upon which you build the rest of your life. The second reward is resilience. The person who has only ever lived in the safe harbor is brittle. The first sign of a storm sends them into a panic. But the person who has learned to navigate the open seas of risk develops a deep, flexible strength. They have faced failure and survived. They have navigated uncertainty and found their way. Economic downturns, personal setbacks, unexpected challenges, these do not shatter them. They see them not as threats, but as familiar weather patterns they have the skill to navigate. This resilience is true security. The third reward is wisdom. There is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is what you learn from reading a book. Wisdom is what you earn in the arena of life. You can read 1,000 books about entrepreneurship, but you will only gain the wisdom of an entrepreneur by actually starting a business. The failures, the successes, the unexpected lessons, this is where true wisdom is forged. It is the street knowledge that cannot be taught in a classroom, and it is the most valuable asset you will ever own. And the final reward, the one that encompasses all others, is a life of aliveness. The primary emotional state of a life lived in the harbor is boredom, tinged with a quiet desperation. It is a life lived in shades of gray. The life of courage, on the other hand, is a life lived in vibrant color. It is a life of engagement, of purpose, of being a participant in the grand adventure, not a spectator. It is the feeling of being fully, intensely, and magnificently alive. That is the ultimate prize. As you stand here today, at the threshold of your decision, I want you to project yourself far into the future. Imagine you are at the end of your days, reflecting on the story of your life. There are two possible stories you can tell. The first is the story of regret. It is the story of a life of caution. It is a story filled with all the doors you did not open, all the chances you did not take, all the words you did not speak, all the songs you did not sing. It is the story of a smooth, unblemished life that aches with the profound emptiness of what if. It is the inventory of all the risks you avoided, and in doing so, the inventory of all the life you never lived. The second story is the story of scars. It is the story of a life of courage. It is the story of battles fought, of ventures attempted, of mountains climbed. It is a story filled with the lessons from failures and the joy of victories earned. The scars, the memory of a failed business, a risky investment that didn't work out, a public attempt that fell short are not signs of weakness. They are a testament to a life fully lived. They are the marks of a person who showed up, who participated, who dared greatly. Which story do you want to be yours? You must understand that you are writing that story right now, every single day. With your acts of courage or your surrenders to fear, you are writing another sentence. And so we come back to the beginning, to the inescapable truth that life is risky, and the greatest risk of all is to risk nothing. You have shattered the illusion of safety. You have confronted the anatomy of fear. You have chosen the mindset of the manager. You have been given the framework for the calculated leap. There is nothing left to learn. There is only something left to do. What is the risk you have been avoiding? As I speak, you know what it is. It is the business idea that keeps you up at night. It is the investment you know you should make. It is the new skill you have been putting off learning. It is that crucial conversation that could change everything. It is standing right in front of you. I am not asking you to be reckless. I am asking you to be a strategist. I am asking you to apply the framework, to educate yourself, to find the asymmetry, to design the pilot, to set your exit. And then I am asking you to take the first step. The compounding power of courage begins with a single act. That one act of courage you take today will not end today. It will send an echo through the rest of your week, your month, your year, and your decade. It sets a new pattern. It informs your identity. It begins the compounding process that turns a single brave step into a destiny. Your potential is on the other side of that risk. The life you dream of is on the other side of that fear. So do not wait for the stars to align. Do not wait for a guarantee that will never come. Take the chance. Take the calculated leap. Bet on your own ability to learn, to adapt, and to create. The bill for not trying is a price too high for any of us to pay. Your journey of courage begins now. This conversation is not over. It is just the beginning. To remain on this path, to get consistent reminders of these principles, and to be part of a community that chooses courage over comfort, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Your subscription is more than a click. It is a declaration. It is your commitment to yourself to live a life of intelligent risk and profound reward. Join us, and I will see you on the next step of the journey.